extraordinaire, the gemologist.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Gemologist Presents. I am sorry I missed my midweek show. I've just been very busy traveling. It's been a crazy week. I think I'm not traveling, at least for work, until January, so that's a good thing. Now, the bad thing is that it was a great week. I went to a show up in Atlanta after a work trip through Birmingham. So I flew into Atlanta, drove to Birmingham, drove back to Atlanta, and then stayed the night. And then I was able to catch a show that happened to be there as a coincidence to my work trip, which was pretty awesome. But after coming back from the show, I don't know. I feel like when I'm getting older, I like fall a lot. I don't know if that's a normal thing. Like the other day, I was chasing one of their cats who got out, and I didn't know that one of the dogs had dug a hole into the dog run, and I tripped in the hole and scraped my knees. No big deal, right? And then here in Atlanta, as I was coming back from the show, I tripped, on like a broken flagstone. Stepped into a hole, tripped on a broken flagstone in the sidewalk. They're doing construction. I don't know the area. I didn't know, and I fell, and I hurt my wrist really bad. I think it's a level type 2 sprain, maybe. Hopefully not broken. And I scraped up my nose, which, me being vain is not a good thing. So yeah, so that happened. Now that I'm going to talk about the show because it was awesome. I went to go see Merciful Fate with King Diamond. I've never seen Merciful Fate, despite them being around since 1982. That is a future show. I'm looking at the albums that were released in 1982, which includes the debut Merciful Fate album, also a few other awesome metal hard rock albums. I want to get together and do a show about that. I was trying to convince my buddy David, and maybe his son will come on too, because his son is a metal dude. So maybe it'll be a special guest show. Anyway, that could be coming up sometime after Thanksgiving. But anyway, and then I haven't really played much. I got to get into a game of Reaver run by Joe Salvador of Raven God Games. We're playtesting this game. It's really cool. Good, tough little fight and combat, and some interesting things that we discovered. And then we finally got our OSE Temple of Elemental Evil game going again, run by BJ Boyd of the Arcane Alienist. So I'll talk a little bit about that. So pretty cool. But first off, we got Jason Connerly going to kind of respond to the last non-mini review podcast about GMs, what are GMs selling, what are players buying into. So I'll play those messages and then respond to that's a hiccup, Jason's calls. Carry on, my wayward son, there'll be peace when you are done. Lay your weary head to rest, don't you cry no more.
Hey, Carl, Jason here. Really enjoyed your talk with BJ. You hit some interesting ideas. I think ultimately it just shows that if players are going to agree to play in a pre-written adventure path or pre-written module, or in a pre-plotted out game campaign that the GM has come up with, they're just accepting that they're going to be in a railroad, to some degree, and they need not to complain about that. If they agree to play in this adventure path or this module, and they're demanded that they're going to be taken prisoner or give up their sword, then they agreed to play in that railroad. You know what I mean? If you're playing in a world that's now I'm brain farting. I just typed this on Discord what the word is and I can't remember it. But if you're playing an emergent game where things are being determined as you go, then that's a little bit different. But pretty much anything where you have plot points built in is going to be a railroad to some, like your enemy within. I would argue that boat burning was a railroaded thing because it's written in the game. Before you ever started the game, it was determined their boat was going to get burned. So that's definitely a railroad. Now, that doesn't make it bad. Again, if the players agree to it, that's fine. It's not a problem at all. But you need player buy-in so they don't complain about it. But all in all, interesting episode. Really enjoyed it. Keep up the great work. Can't wait for your next episode.
Hey, Jason, thanks for the call and some excellent points. And I guess in a way, you're speaking to the choir, right? If the players decide, hey, this is what we want to play because it's what you propose, GM. What I usually would have done in the past actually is put things to a vote. Like, what are we going to play? What do we want to play? Here's some options. I have a huge shelf full of options, right? Like many of us do. And this is what the players want to play. So, like for example, when I said, "Hey, let's do a palate cleanser game," or they suggested a palate cleanser game, what do we want to play? Let's do Ghost of Salt Marsh. We've heard good things about it. I told them, okay, well, the first adventure, the way that starts you out is kind of a redo of Sinister Secret of Salt Marsh. So it's an adventure. This is what we're gonna play. And they're like, cool. Well, that's the way it's gonna go. We're gonna go to this haunted house. We're not gonna diverge, you know, on the path to the haunted house. We're not gonna go down to the dwarven mine or go out to sea first. We're gonna check out the haunted house because that's what we agreed to do to play this adventure, Sinister Secret of Saltmarsh. Um, Same thing with what we did the other day. Oh, that is another game I will have to, as an addendum. I ran, I ran a game of the Fallout 2D20 Modifius game, so I will have to talk about that as well as an addendum. I just remember that, or maybe you know what? Yeah, okay. Maybe I'll talk about that in a different episode. I don't want this episode to be too long, but we played Fallout 2D20 as I asked the characters, what do you want to play? Hey, I have the starter set for Fallout 2D20. We're playing the starter set. This is what we agreed to do. And of course, it's, a set piece, set of adventures, and it's meant to show the players how the game works. So yeah, it's going to be a little, if not a lot, railroady. I think what's interesting about, taking their swords, taking their stuff, putting players prisoners, I don't know if that really works in the middle of a campaign, even though it is written. This is my opinion. I really didn't like the execution in the 5e Iron Kingdoms game that I used. I didn't like how that was implemented. I really don't think they revised the timeline very well in the published product or in the future PDFs. We were running off the PDF because I got it advanced copy because of Kickstarter. But yeah, I don't. I think like if you're starting an adventure where the characters are in prison, they don't have their stuff, they wake up and they've been shanghaied. That's a little different because then you probably tell the players ahead of time, hey, this is how the scenario starts, right? Like I think a great start to the scenario, and the players really love the idea. Unfortunately, the campaign wasn't it was not sustainable for maybe I'll say why again, but in a Pathfinder adventure path, right? So the adventure path was called is a Strange Eons, and in the first adventure, the players wake up in an asylum with their memories like wiped, right? So I tell the players ahead of time this is what's going to happen. They were like, oh, that's pretty cool. It looks like really fun, and you find out who they are in their memories slowly, and then the second adventure uh, is called the first adventure is actually called what's it called? I will tell you what it's called. It is called. Here it's coming. It's coming. It's coming. I can't find the. It is called In Search of Sanity. The second book in that adventure path, Strange Eons, is the Thrushmore Terror, and in that one, you after escaping from the waking nightmare of Briarstone Asylum, they go to the town of Thrushmore and unravel more mystery about their lost memories. And yeah, and after they solve that mystery, there's no real incentive to keep going. They learned that they were not so nice people, and then they saved the town. Why would they leave? Right? I mean, that's so there was, and in that, like, it wants you to leave the place that you just kind of reestablished yourself in after being such bad people, and now you've redeemed yourself. I don't know. It would be more conducive to doing adventures around there instead of then trying to find out the person who wiped your memories. I guess revenge was not such a strong incentive, at least for these players, this group of players, right? So anyway, that was how that was set up, and that was I think fine. Maybe like during the middle, and again, the well, even so, I mean that's what Warhammer, that's what Enemy Within does, right? In the middle of the sort of saga, you lose your boat, um, and the idea is so that you can go to Altorf, right? So you're not sorry, not go to Altorf, but go to Middenheim, which is not on the river, and you wouldn't be able to take your boat anyway. But in theory, I guess it could be done a little better, even if the player characters don't lose their boat. There was still enough incentive. I think they were going to go anyway to Middenheim because they wanted to follow up on some clues that they had discovered in previous adventures. So I don't know. It is like people call it the quantum ship burning, but perhaps it's not quite necessary. And maybe it ends up being just like a funny side note and anecdote as part of the pathetic aesthetic of Warhammer Fantasy, right? But anyway, Jason, thank you so much for the calls, and I hope that helps to answer at least you know what the GM is selling and what the players might be buying into. Um, yeah, I guess another example in the Lost City, right? The premise is you're stumbling through the premise is that you're stumbling through the desert and come upon a ruin. And again, that's a setup. You've lost everything. Now you got to find it because you've lost your way, and now you got to find out what the hell is this thing sticking up out of the desert. Right? There are a lot of adventures that do that have this sort of kind of you've lost everything kind of setup, and I think that's a better, easier to swallow occurrence than taking your stuff in the middle of an adventure. But like you say, if the players have bought into it, what the GM is proposing, then yeah, that's what we should be doing. Maybe, or at least we should be communicate and be amicable about it, and not try to derail an adventure we've tried to play. I mean, clearly, an adventure setup, like a sandbox setup, where you know it's emergent and the characters can go in different directions. Much like if I would to set up, even though you're playing adventures in Harn, I think the best you play that adventure in Harn, and that was that again. That was like a mission. But if I were running an actual Harn campaign, I think there would be a lot of. I loved what the Riddle of Steel did, and that it gave characters like motivations and things that they were ambitions. I think it's called ambitions. It might be. Arlen Walker could call in and correct me if I'm wrong. I think it's ambitions, but the players had ambitions, and they would try to promote their ambition during the course of play, and then that led to some great emergent occurrences. That, yeah, there might be a little thread going out on the background, but you know, they can do what they want, and I'm kind of liking how Kingmaker might be set up in that way too, because while there is a mission or like a story thread that kind of weaves its way through, there's also a sandbox, and the players know we've talked about it can go and explore whatever hex they want to, and there's incentive XP to explore the hexes. Um, so and can gather resources, maybe find allies, maybe find some cool treasure, right? To as explore the hexes in the territory they're supposed to be, I guess, competing to get a charter for. So yeah, I think there's really a lot of different ways to do it, both in sort of the story mode and emergent mode, right? But anyway, I think the bottom line is you got to communicate to your players what the options are, what we're going to do, and hopefully they'll buy in. Again, Jason, thanks for the call. Speaking of railroads, no, I'm just kidding. We're really having a great time in the Reaver playtest by Joe Salvador, and we a lot of cool stuff happened. I missed the last time, um, but um, but this time was pretty exciting, and I'm working off the summary that Joe did on Trello, our Trello site. So here we go. So we had this big battle at the mound, and Gorak, who is one of the bear men, kind of primitives that live in the mists, and Wolfgar, who is played by Joe Richter, gathered up the dead and started burning them in a large pyre. Sorry, while myself, Asgold, I play Asgold the Lame, a shaman, and Laszlo interrogate the prisoner. Brutus also helped to interrogate. He was there adding muscle and stares and intimidation. We intimidated him and beat him a little bit too. Promised him mercy, but whatever. He told him that the Crimson Cult isn't actually the name of the group, and they follow these guys called the Solomonari, also known as Sholomancers, and they're a mythical circle of demon worshipping sorcerers that keep a fortress somewhere in the Volcarthian Mountains. And this kind of cool information is what Joe gives in his game. And what's going to be neat about Reaver is not just the game system, which I really enjoy. It's dynamic. It leads to kind of cool things you can do in combat and out of combat. But it also, is this world that he's been, working on. And I hope there's a lot of stuff about the world, or he'll have the first book going and then have a world book. And I think that'd be pretty cool. But he's given a lot of thought to this. Anyway, the cult soldier, this guy is following a person called Vestiza the Iron Weaver, who seems to have the spear that Wolfgar is looking for. That was taken from his people. They took his father's spear. And they're exploring the mists at the order of this guy named Ugomir Baulari, who's also a Sholomancer, who has set himself up in Duraxium. Oh, that might be one of the people that our buddy Kato saw with the gem that came from the Spear of the Mist. The soldier fears Ugomir, who sees us now and hears our words, and Vestisa has allied herself with the Skull Tribe, who are the enemies of the Bear Tribe, and is still excavating or looking for treasure in the mists, and is probably in the village now. He also insinuates that the Skulls have some abominable religious practices, and he considers them savages, but, whatever. Wolfgar hears the talk of the spear. He takes interest, tries to get more information. He doesn't know why they brought the spear. So then we just throw him on the pyre and he's burned to death, burned him alive. And Wolfgar notes that the pillar of black smoke above them would be visible all around the valley. We didn't think about that at the time, honestly. So Brutus and Laszlo then investigate a stone mound that the cultists were excavating. This is where we came upon them and thought them here. And they find that there were 2 hexagonal blocks that had been removed. And Brutus kind of goes in, lights a torch, sees a mummy with a strange death mask and some gold jewelry. So Brutus takes the riches and the mask, and there's a pendant, a scepter, some other stuff. Nothing's really kind of magical, and there's the same sort of ivy tentacles and patterns that we saw in the chamber of El Ormoth. So we've seen this before, and the runes engraved are very similar to what we saw in Rudabringi's cave. So the mummy itself was ancient, and it had the rotted remains of robes and overwrapped limbs, and most unusual was its elongated skull and abnormally long digits. So like either head wrapping or alien, right? It's pretty interesting. So we gather up the equipment and pack them onto workhorses before following Gorak back into the mist, and we're going to try to get back to the Bear Tribe and his people, and Kato's there, and Blue, the big Aurochs, is there too. We don't make a fire, we eat rations, have conversation, we inspect the loot, and while it's very valuable, we could buy a whole city from this. We study the mask, and I study the Book of Alchemy, and then at Laszlo's request, Wolfgar speaks of the spear and describes it as a symbol of his clan. And, right. Anyway, we set up watch. Laszlo takes it first, but sometimes in the watch, these people attack the horses, and the horses start screaming. We rush into the camp, and we see the dull red glow of the bleeding skull peering back at Laszlo. Then they kill 3 of our horses, and the rest of us join the fray as they're aroused by the screaming horses and Laszlo fighting. He attacks the bleeding skull. It gives it furious blows, but is repulsed, gets wounded. I am able to cast a spell that causes several of the skull warriors to fall asleep. So spell casting is cool in this game, I think, because I like a system much like DCC where spell casting is not like a given, right? You can cast a spell, but it could go awry, and I like that Joe has incorporated this into the game system. So there's times when my spells have not gone well for me and the others. So I like that this time the spell worked. And then I'm able to also heal Laszlo as he's getting beat up by the bleeding skull. Eventually, we hit the front. The Wolfgar and Gorak are holding the flank. against two other Skull Warriors, and we jump on the Bleeding Skull. Brutus, Jason Connerly's character, and I surround the Bleeding Skull and press him with thrusts and slashes. Eventually, we take him down. Actually, it was my character that ran him through, but Brutus and Laszlo also dealt him some damage. So it was a good team effort on the Bleeding Skull. Wolfgar and Gorak hold off the remaining ones long enough for Laszlo to kind of help, and then a couple of them flee, and Wolfgar and Laszlo chase them down, or chase one guy down. So when we inspect the skull, we find the mask. It's a mask, and it's pulled off, but it's kind of stuck to his face in a way, like glued or burned onto his face. And there's a man below the skull, and we take the mask, but we have not yet examined it. So I think that's what we're gonna save for the next time. And we definitely want to hit the Skull Tribe. We want to get the Bear Tribe on our side to go after their enemy. Since we've killed the Bleeding Skull, which I guess is like in a boogeyman maybe to the Bear Tribe, undefeatable, but we killed them, so maybe that'll help to bring them in line. But that was a very epic session of Reaver, and I can't wait until the next time. So thanks very much, Joe, for running that, and yeah, cool stuff. All right, the other game I got to play in, which is interesting since I ran, like I said, that Fallout game a couple last Thursday. I want to say so I ran that Fallout game on the 10th of November, and I haven't been able to. I was scheduled to run like some Warhammer, get back to our Warhammer game this past Thursday, but because of my injury, I was in too much pain when I came. I got back early. Honestly, I don't know how I managed to drive with one hand without GPS to Atlanta Airport from downtown. Somehow, the gods helped me to get there. But anyway, once I got on the highway, it was no problem. But getting out of downtown, I was like, and I spotted the highway, and I drove there, and I was like, okay, I know Hartfield is south. So I went south, and fortunately, signage was really good. So, signage and the gods. Because there's like no GPS signal in downtown Atlanta. It was really weird. Also weird because I was like thinking of The Walking Dead. Because there's that, in the first season, right? He goes to Atlanta, right? So anyway, we finally got to play. There's been illness and other things getting in the way of us getting back to our Temple of Elemental Evil game, and we've been stuck in Hamlet, planning to go to Nulb. We beat up some merchants that were cultists of the Eye, and then we got a lot of information about Nulb and how we could get in. And our plan is to be disguised as said merchants, or at least as factors, employees of these merchants who are spies in Hamlet, and then see what's up with Nulb and track down what the hell is going on with this cult. Because we think it's, they've already established themselves in Nulb, and they're trying to do that in Hamlet, but, we kind of stopped them. So we also have a cadre of 9 mercenary gnolls. And they're led by Beyonce Knoll. That is BJ's name. That's the name he gave the Knoll leader, which is kind of cool and funny, maybe, if you understand the reference. Anyway, I make sure that we get a because they're humanoids, and they're probably like attacked on sight in most places. I make sure I get not a charter, but a letter of support from Lord Rufus, saying that these are part of our mercenary band, and they're sponsored, if not chartered, hired by the Badgers, right? Because we're part of the Badgers. So mercenary troop. So they're mercenaries of our mercenaries. So anyway, we this finally, after some planning, the last time, and interrogating these merchant dudes, we set off, and we set off, and the Knolls are kind of scouting up ahead, and BJ is doing some rolls in the background. So fortunately, the Knoll spots some bandits um, kind of waiting, laying an ambush on the road. We take the low road to Knoll because like we're going to pose as like merchants and see what happens. We have some places that we're supposed to go to and people we're supposed to contact, and we're on our way. And the Knolls spot this ambush, so we decide to counter ambush them, and we sneak up on them. We make our surprise roll. These guys are surprised, and so there's like two groups of them. There's some groups watching the road, and there's like a group of like reinforcements a little away from the road. So we hit the reinforcement group first, which happens to include, I guess, their leader, and we take him out very quickly. I think we fire volleys of arrows at them. And I think after the surprise volley, there's only like two bandits and the bandit leader standing, and then Beyonce Knoll charges in and starts fighting him. We finish him off that subsequent round with arrow fire and spear attacks, and then and for the Knolls then move to wait and lay an ambush for the rest of the guys to come because the bandit leader was able to get off like a shout, "Oh, come and help us!" And they did come and help, and then they were effectively funneled into another, like shooting fish in the barrel type of situation where they run into the clearing and we unleash more arrows on them, and then the bloodlust goes up. We have Beyonce, Knoll, and Retlaw fight in the melee, and the Knolls are picking off stragglers. Dude and Raven and Narflin are shooting arrows as well into the fray. I'm taking them out. I think Narflin took out like three of the bandits. The little sneaky gnome thief guy took these guys out. Dude missed a few times, but he took one or two out maybe. Did some damage. Retlaw threw rocks in the initial volley too, which was fun. We looked it up, and half ogres can throw rocks, which is kind of fun. So then we annihilate them, and then they give up. We kept two prisoners, and we interrogate them. We get some of the same information, but some new information. They happen to be members of the cult, so we promise them that we'll show them a merciful death if they cooperate. They're bandits. Bandits are, the sentence is death on the road according to Verbonk. So at this time, we collect the treasure, and they have coinage, silver and copper and gems. So bandit leader had a cache of gems, probably hiding from his poor guys. So we do. Maybe this is not the best thing to do. We are neutral. Most of the party's neutral. I'll look around, and they're cultists of the eye. They've done a lot of damage in Hamlet, etc. So, we turn them over to Beyonce and the Knolls, and I ask their opinion, and she says never leave an enemy alive, because their demeanor suggested that they wouldn't just throw down their weapons and take up the plow. They were going to go back to Knoll, get some more work, and probably rat us out either inadvertently or on purpose. So you gotta, no survivors. So we let the Knolls have their way with them. They're probably gonna eat them, and maybe Retlaw will join them. I don't know what half ogres eat. Probably people. And then we find a lot of treasure. Like I said, silver, copper gems. We give all the coins to the Knolls, and we give Beyonce Knoll a nice gem too as a bonus because they did really well. And then we made it to Knoll without further problem, and now we're going to go to the place that they told us to go to and meet with the guy who has an awful name. I don't understand these Gygaxian names. It's kind of funny. I'm not going to spoil it because you got to play Temple of Elemental Evil if you play anything in your gaming lifetime. But it was good. Just encounters on the road. We got to Knoll. We're in the next phase of Temple of Elemental Evil. Thanks so much, BJ, for running it. And fun stuff. Well, thank you everyone so much for joining me for the Geomologist Presents. And thank you to my caller, Jason Connerly. Hey, if you guys have any questions or comments about what Jason said or about what I responded to, that would be great. Also, any feedback on the Reavers recap or the Temple of Elemental Evil would be awesome too. And you can reach me through various ways. You can still drop me a message via Anchor, but onto the Anchor website, not through the app, which I know has really unfortunately cut back on the number of messages that I and a lot of others get here in the Anchor sphere. So if you guys have any pull with Anchor or Spotify, tell them that it really kind of sucks for building a community. Anyway, you can do that, or you can record a message and leave it for me either at my Gmail account, gmologist@gmail.com, or through one of the various Discords that I'm on. You can DM me through that and leave me a message. And you can also leave me about a 90-second message at least using a SpeakPipe account that I have, and I have that in the show notes. So thank you so much for the intro and outro music, TJ Drennan, and my wife Amy does the cover clip art for the Geomologist Presents. And talk to y'all soon. Thanks so much.